Welcome back to Healing Old Wounds, Episode 9. In this chapter, I faced the coldest season of my new life. A winter filled with questions, heartbreak, and quiet realizations. What I once thought was a new beginning became another test of endurance. December arrived, bringing another first, Christmas. At Ahmad's house, a small plastic tree stood in the corner, a few presents tucked neatly beneath it. On Christmas morning, the children woke early, their eyes wide with excitement as they tore through wrapping paper. Their laughter filled the house, echoing against the walls and the cold outside. I watched quietly, soaking in this unfamiliar tradition. The twinkle of lights, the smell of sweet spices, the warmth of family gathered close. It was my first Christmas. And though the meal was warm and welcoming, I felt like an outsider watching from a distance. I was there in body only. My mind wandered, wishing I could have stayed back home. That evening we shared a simple but beautiful dinner. The smell of turkey and cinnamon filled the air as I helped in the kitchen, pretending to belong. For a fleeting moment I felt part of something normal. A family that showed affection, shared laughter, and offered kindness without asking for anything in return. But when night came and the lights dimmed, the emptiness crept back in. I missed something I never truly had. A safe home, a mother's comfort, a brother's protection. I wanted to start over, to be someone new, but I was still trapped inside the old version of me. The small house was crowded. Ahmad and his family slept in the attic. My mother stayed in the tiny room downstairs, and everyone shared one bathroom. We slept wherever there was space, each of us quietly trying to find a sense of belonging in this massive world. A couple of weeks later, it became clear that the crowded little house was too much. One of Ahmad's friends from back home and his American wife offered us their spare room if I could help with their baby. So we packed our bags and moved again. I did whatever I could to keep the house running, with no plans for the future, just existing, not living. Then the rug was pulled from beneath us again. One night, the couple argued behind closed doors. I couldn't understand their words, but I knew it was about us. I still remembered that hollow ache in my chest, the trembling of my body, the feeling of being completely unwanted. I wanted to scream from the top of my lungs, "Take me home." I never wanted to come here. I hated everything about this cold, callous country. I even hated the snow. With no plans for where to go next, the next morning Ahmad came and picked us up. He took us back to his small house. By then my mother's heart was broken, too old to keep moving, too tired to keep hoping. She had no place of her own, no place to call home. All she wanted was to be with her sons. She believed they would take care of her, as sons do in our culture. That was the warmth of the old country, where children grew up knowing that caring for their parents was an honor. But she was wrong. This country had changed them. It made them people she no longer recognized. After all the neglect and abuse she had endured from my father, she escaped, hoping to find peace with her sons. But that hope turned out to be nothing more than a fragile dream, one that broke almost as soon as she arrived. In just a few short months, she wasn't simply missing her old home. She was aching for it. Every part of her longed for the warmth of the familiar, the rhythm of her own language, the scent of morning bread, the comfort of faces that knew her story. She had left a kind of pain behind, only to find another waiting, colder, quieter, and lonelier than she could have ever imagined. As for me, I was tired, angry, and chained down by the same people who had imprisoned me since the age of 6. My siblings could do no wrong. They had full freedom to live their lives as they pleased. But for me, the old culture still held its grip. It didn't allow me the same freedom. Unable to speak out, to have a voice, I followed everyone's lead. I was 21 years old with no sign of independence. No job, no money, no place of my own. I didn't know the language, had no friends or anyone to help me. I couldn't drive, didn't have a car, and found myself lost in a world that felt nothing like home. I was so tired of my short, fearful and meaningless life. The little 6-year-old inside me didn't know how to grow up or how to be a responsible adult. She only wanted to play with the children. They understood her, and she understood them. Adulthood, the future, responsibility, independence. These were words my mind could not yet comprehend. On the outside, I looked like any other grown woman. The only difference was that inside this woman lived a child who was afraid to be noticed, afraid others might see the shame and guilt on her face, afraid they might discover the painful secret she had carried for so many years. Sometimes late at night I would sit by the small window and stare at the street light outside. I watched it glow softly through the darkness until dawn began to break. When the sun slowly rose over the horizon, the light would fade, the darkness would disappear, and the world would grow brighter and seem safer. In those moments I would wonder if that same light could somehow guide me, help me find my way. Then, as it vanished, I wondered if I could vanish too, dissolve quietly into something pure and untouched. I imagined walking until I could no longer feel the cold, until the constant noise in my mind gave way to silence. But then I would think of my mother asleep in the next bed, her breathing slow and shallow, and I would whisper to myself, "Not yet, she still needs me." That simple thought, her need, kept me from falling apart completely. Days passed slowly, one blending into the next. I found small escapes. Going outside, staring at God's creations, tree branches now putting on their spring colourful flowers. The grass is turning green, roses blooming. For some reason that always put a smile on my face. I would escape the small house with my notebook and write in my native language. Those were my happy moments. They were reminders that I was still here, that my story wasn't over yet. Even in my quiet rebellion, I dreamed of a life where I could breathe freely, where my choices were my own. But dreams, I was learning, could be dangerous things. They showed you what you didn't have. They reminded you of how far away freedom still was. Each time hope stirred inside me, it was quickly smothered by reality, by rules that were never spoken out loud but always enforced, by expectations that weighed heavier on me than on anyone else. I watched my siblings move through life with confidence, making decisions without fear of consequence. They spoke freely, laughed loudly, and stepped into the world as if it belonged to them. I stood quietly on the sidelines, invisible and less needed. my presence tolerated but never truly welcomed. I learned to make myself small, to take up as little space as possible. Emotionally, mentally, physically. At times, anger bubbled inside me, hot and sharp. I wanted to ask why my life had been paused while everyone else's continued, why my past followed me across oceans, refusing to loosen its grip, why this so-called new beginning felt more like an extension of the same imprisonment I thought I had left behind. But the questions had nowhere to go. There was no safe place to speak them aloud, so I swallowed them. I became skilled at silence. The days were long, filled with chores, waiting, and the constant ache of uncertainty. I lived in between moments, not fully present, not fully gone. I didn't belong to the old world anymore, but the new one had not opened its doors to me either. I hovered somewhere in between, suspended, unseen. Sometimes I caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Her eyes carried a tiredness far beyond her years. Her posture held the memory of being watched, judged, corrected. I wondered who I might have become if fear hadn't shaped every decision, if love had been freely given instead of rationed, if safety had been my foundation instead of survival. At night, the house would fall quiet and my thoughts grew louder. Memories I tried to bury resurfaced without warning, pressing against my chest until breathing felt like work. I replayed conversations that never happened, arguments I never dared to have, words I wished I could say. I imagined standing up for myself just once, and felt both exhilarated and terrified by the thought. Freedom wasn't just about leaving a place, I realized. It was about unlearning the belief that I didn't deserve it. I didn't yet know how to do that. Still, something inside me refused to disappear completely. Even on the darkest days, a small spark remained. Fragile, flickering, but alive. It showed itself in the way I noticed the changing seasons, in the way flowers forced their way through the cold earth, in the quiet comfort of writing my thoughts onto paper. Those moments reminded me that growth was possible even in harsh conditions. I began to understand that survival itself was an act of resistance. For now, all I could do was endure and hold on to the hope that one day I can have a life that finally felt like my own, but would I know how to live it? Would I be wise enough to understand it? Would the little girl inside me know how to make the right choices? Would she be strong enough to stand on her own? All remained unknown.